Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Roslyn Hill Chapel, a spiritual home for open minds. I'm Sally Somerville, a chapel elder and worship assistant today for this Unitarian service. Whoever you are, wherever you are, if you're on Zoom or here with us, we welcome you here to our spiritual community in Hampstead. As you can see, we have laid out seats in rows, but ask you to keep an empty seat between you where possible. We don't insist, but would prefer that you continue to use hand sanitizer and to wear masks, especially when moving around the building. Our monthly theme is Renewing Faith. Please go to the website to find more details about all of our chapel activities and download our Open Mind newsletter if you don't have online access. Copies of the newspaper are available from the stewards. Do join us after the service for refreshments at the back of the chapel. If you're watching at home, you can enjoy tea and conversation in the virtual side aisle via Zoom. Just click the Connect link in the YouTube description to find it. We are an independent registered charity, and we rely on your donations to continue our work. You can donate by using the donate button on the website or by leaving a donation in the basket at the back of the chapel. Thank you for the many ways you contribute to our spiritual community. After the call to worship, I'll hand you over to our service leader today, who's going to introduce herself. But here's the call to worship. Love is the doctrine of this chapel. The quest of truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve humankind in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony. This is our great covenant, one with another.
Good morning and welcome. Can you all hear me? Yeah. So my name is Eleanor Chiari, and it's a joy and a privilege to have been invited to give this service today. Roslyn Hill holds a very special place in my heart because it's where I first discovered Unitarianism, back when Jim Robinson was the minister here, and I was also married in this chapel, so it's very precious to me personally. This beautiful building has seen so much happen under its ceilings. People have come here to sing and pray, to find hope in the midst of war, to marry, baptize, and bury their loved ones, to share joy as well as pain and transformation. It is a place made sacred by all who have come here and all who come here. It is also a starting place, the circle on the map for our journey today. You are here. We are here. People connecting, hello, from the internet, invisible faces, but I'm sure very familiar to some of you here. You are here too. So let us pause and take a moment to honor this place of arrival, this time of coming together. Look around the room and also imagine those invisible loved ones beyond the internet, out in the ether, at their homes, watching you. And turn to your neighbor and say your name and welcome them to this chapel if you can. So just do the welcoming now and welcome everyone who's joining. Okay. The flowers this week are sponsored by Ken Levy, in remembrance of the dear chapel member Anne Feiner, who loved flowers and whose birthday would have been the 16th of March. So let's take a moment to actually look at these flowers and reflect on how they bring the green life force of spring into our sacred space, as well as Anne's memory for those of you who knew her. So let's really take a moment to see them. And then thank yourself for making this time on a Sunday morning to be truly here. Whoever you are, whomever you love, however you are feeling here today, you are welcome here. And I see there's some people coming in, so come and join us, please. I'm going to begin by lighting our chalice. A symbol of Unitarian communities across the world. It's gonna not light, of course. May the light of this chalice be bright enough to hold our grief and our love for this world, which currently feels more fragile than ever. May it guide us in the days ahead and help us find our own ways to bring a little light to the people and situations that we have control over. Let us remember today the civilian victims of all conflicts, ordinary citizens from all sides whose lives are shattered by war, and those who risk their lives to protest against injustice. Let's sing together hymn 226, which should be in your order of service, Song of Peace. Children who want to come forward, you can come and join us, or you can stay where you are if you want to. So I'm going to tell you the story that is taken from Owl at Home, and it's the story of an owl. This is the owl. Oops. I'm just going to hold the book for a second. So, one night, Owl went down to the seashore, and he sat on a rock, and he looked out at the waves. Everything was dark. Then a small tip of the moon, show it over there, came up over the edge of the sea. Keep going, keep going. Owl watched the moon. It climbed higher and higher. Yeah, keep it higher and higher. Into the sky. Soon, the whole round moon was shining. Owl sat on the rock and looked up at the moon for a long time. If I am looking at you, moon, then you must be looking back at me. We must be very good friends. The moon did not answer, but Owl said, I will come back and see you again, moon, but now I must go home. Owl walked down the path. Start walking right down. He looked up at the sky. The moon was still there. It was following him. Come back this way. It was following him. Keep following him. No, no, moon. Wait, a little slower. Say, no, no, moon. It is kind of you to light my way, but you must stay up over the sea where you look so fine. Owl walked on a little farther. Now you can walk. He looked at the sky again. There was the moon coming right along with him. Dear moon, said Owl, you really must not come home with me. My house is small. You will not fit through the door, and I have nothing to give you for supper. Back this way. Owl kept on walking. The moon sailed after him over the tops of the trees with your hand. Moon, said Owl, I think that you do not hear me. Owl climbed to the top of a hill, and he shouted as loudly as he could. You say, goodbye, moon. Just say, goodbye. Okay, goodbye, moon. Goodbye, moon. The moon went behind the clouds. Owl looked and looked. The moon was gone. It is always a little sad to say goodbye to a friend, said Owl. Owl came home. He put on his pajamas, and went to bed. The room was very dark. Owl was still feeling sad. All at once, Owl's bedroom was filled with silver light. Owl looked out of the window. The moon was coming from behind the clouds. Moon, you have followed me all the way home. What a good round friend you are. Then Owl put his head on the pillow and closed his eyes. The moon was shining down through the window. Owl did not feel sad at all. Thank you very much, my moon and my owl. I invite you into a time of prayer and meditation. Can you hear me? Is this reactivated? Is it all right? You can hear okay? We come together in fellowship each Sunday with hearts full of joy and full of concern. If you are holding someone in your hearts this morning, I invite you to say their name aloud in the coming moments of stillness so that we may hold them in our prayers. Spirit of life and love, God of our hearts, we give thanks for those who bring us joy and pray for the safekeeping of those whom we hold in concern. For all those names, spoken and unspoken, may they be surrounded by the loving kindness we offer them today. I'm going to start now the reading that the service is based on, and it's by Tony Högland, and it's called Field Guide. Once, in the cool blue middle of a lake, up to my neck in that most precious element of all, I found a pale gray, curled upward pigeon feather floating on the tension of the water, at the very instant when a dragonfly, like a blue-green iridescent bobby pin, hovered over it, then lit and rested. That's all. I mention this in the same way that I fold the corner of a page in certain library books, so that the next reader will know where to look for the good parts. I'm aware that you don't have a printed out version of this poem, so would you like me to read it one more time? Okay. Field Guide. Once, in the cool blue middle of a lake, up to my neck in that most precious element of all, I found a pale gray, curled upward pigeon feather floating on the tension of the water at the very instant when a dragonfly, like a blue-green iridescent bobby pin, hovered over it, then lit and rested. That's all. I mention this in the same way that I fold the corner of a page in certain library books, so that the next reader will know where to look for the good parts. I don't need to tell you how difficult the past few years have been, and the last 2 weeks have felt, to me, almost as long as the pandemic. In these dark times, I find that I need more than ever to stop and find moments of beauty and connection, and that I yearn for the kind of instruction Tony Högland describes so vividly in this poem. A guide to call me to attention, to listening, to awe. A field guide for the soul. What makes field guides special is the ambiguity around their use. They're books we tap into while we're engrossed in something else, the natural world, usually. They help us experience the world more vividly, but what we're using them is up to us. Each user will refer to their field guide for different reasons and in different ways. I like Högland's ending, referring to the sneaky folding of pages in library books so that the next reader will know where to look for the good parts. For Christians or Muslims or Jews or Sikhs and so on, the holy texts are shared field guides, and repeated readings during ceremonies and across the calendar years present the good parts from centuries of experience. Words about the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem or the suffering of Mary holding her young son's lifeless body in her arms offer shared answers to the meaninglessness of war or untimely death, for example, and there are infinite examples from the holy text. One of the joys of being a Unitarian in 2022 is that we don't have to adhere to one specific text or religious calendar. But in so doing, we also lose something. And in times like these, it's worth thinking about what sources or practices we may tap into to tend to our souls as we go through the broader field that is our lives. Oops. Field guides for the soul are everywhere. For today, I'm going to split my homily into 3 sort of shorter chapters with fragments brought together the way a field guide is made, so lots of little choppy bits. Chapter 1 will be basic instructions. Chapter 2, dark forest and straight paths. And Chapter 3, homecoming. I hope that out of the little fragments that I will offer you today, at least one may speak to your deeper self with the radiance of the little dragonfly landing on the curled up feather in Högland's poem, and bring you a little more alive, if only for a moment. So let's jump in by coming together to sing hymn 125 from the Purple Book, One More Step Along the World I Go. So, if you're here on this Sunday morning, you're probably seeking something. Perhaps it's a sense of inner quiet or a spiritual nourishment, deepening your faith, as the theme of this month is here at Hampstead. And even if you don't like the word spiritual, you still might think of yourself as being on a journey. From the old things to the new, keep me traveling along with you. But where to? And what does a Unitarian journey even look like? How do we know that we're on the right path? The poet Machado says, there is no path. He writes, caminante no hay camino, se hace camino al andar. Forgive my Italian accent. Walker, there is no path. The path is made by walking. By walking, we make the path. So I'll say it again. Walker, there is no path. The path is made by walking. By walking, we make the path. It is often when we look back that we're able to trace a journey, a sense of progression, but it's not always easy to know where we're heading or how to keep going. As I take my tentative steps into a spiritual life, and I've only recently started to feel comfortable using the word God, for example, I find that some basic instructions, daily practices, and reminders help deepen my walking. So here I offer you chapter 1 of our field guide, Basic Instructions. Basic instructions. This is where a Unitarian gets into trouble right away. I might start by arguing that the key ingredients for a healthy spiritual life are silence, listening, attention, community, good books, and deeds. It's a pretty wholesome list, but it may not even start to scratch the surface of what your list of basic instructions might be, the ingredients of your spiritual life. You might put dogs, climbing mountains, and music first. There are no basic instructions. Ralph Waldo Emerson recommended that we make our own Bibles, our own holy texts. I have one that is a sort of thick notebook, and I go back to it again and again. Anytime I find a quote or something that speaks to me, I write into this notebook. I don't mean to say that I'm writing the Bible, but I have my own little holy Bible. And in one of the pages of this book that I meant to bring to show you, there's an instruction from the poet Rainer Maria Rilke that I would like, that he wrote to his young friend, and it seems to me very wise. He wrote, "I ask you, dear sir, to have patience with all that is unresolved in your heart, and to try to love the questions themselves, like closed rooms, like books written in a foreign language. Don't try to find the answers now. They cannot be given anyway, because you would not be able to live them. For everything is to be lived. Live the questions now. Perhaps you then may gradually, without noticing, one day in the future, live into the answers." Living the questions is a good basic instruction for the spiritual path. To live the questions is to experience our lives with wonder and curiosity, to move into the unknown with an open heart, learning to let go into a sense of trust and awe. Some religious traditions explicitly include questions as anchors to everyday spiritual practice. One of my favorites is the question from the Hasidic tradition, "Have you looked at the sky today?" According to Rabbi Ariel Berger, in this tradition, humankind is thought to receive consciousness from the sky, and it is only by recognizing our small place in the universe that we can really come to ourselves. So I ask you, have you looked at the sky today? When you go outside, make sure you remember to look up. Looking at the sky requires looking outside and then coming back into your own body. It can mean changing your physical location to be able to see, moving backwards or lying on your back. The question asks you to pay attention, to stop what you're doing and look up. A vital part of field guides is the space around the edges to write notes and ask your questions. Allowing enough space, enough breath, enough silence around our experience is another instruction, one I struggle with a lot. In Japanese, there's a word, yutori, spaciousness, which means leaving enough time to arrive somewhere so that you can look around. Making time for our spiritual lives, whether through prayer, meditation, or coming to services, helps strengthen our sense of aliveness. It feeds this inner life. Nadia Bolz-Weber points out how faith is a team sport, requiring community to fully flourish. So in coming together in worship on a day like today, we have an opportunity to hold space in ways that we just can't do alone. So before I move into the second part of this homily, imaginary field guide, I would like us to take a few moments of yutori together, spaciousness. So I'm going to guide you through a meditation that focuses on the 5 senses. So begin by getting comfortable. Let go of anything you don't need to be holding right now, and feel your sit bones in the chair. If you can, sort of straighten your back. And take a long, slow, deep breath in. Hold it, and then let go. Loudly, almost with a sigh. Let's do it again. Deep breath in, hold, and let go. Now take a moment to look around the room and take in 5 different things into your consciousness. 5 objects, colors, or people. Do this quickly and without thinking. Just count to 5. Now, if it's comfortable, close your eyes and take a moment to feel 4 different textures. Maybe your skin, your clothes, the chair you're sitting in. If you're holding any paper, maybe the paper or a different part of your clothes. And now if you're able to, listen to 3 different sounds. Notice them. And take a moment to smell 2 different smells. And focus on the taste in your mouth. Now, if you can, open your eyes and notice any changes in your awareness of your presence in this space. Being present, paying attention, breathing, all are ways to prepare ourselves for the surprise and wonder that can sometimes startle us when we pause to really listen. But again, there are no basic instructions. So, chapter 2, dark forests and straight paths. Nel mezzo del cammin di nostra vita mi ritrovai per una selva oscura, che la diritta via era smarrita. Ai quanto a dir qual era e cosa dura, e sta selva selvaggia e aspra e forte, che nel pensiero rinnova la paura. The 13th century Italian poet Dante Alighieri begins his Divine Comedy with these words. In the middle of the journey of our life, I found myself within a dark forest, because the straight path had been lost, and the forest was savage and rough and tough, and even just thinking about it renews my fear. Dante is writing about the dark forest of the soul, times when the path ahead appears entirely obscured by anxiety, panic, and fear. In his worldview, it's the path away from God. In the dark forest, we feel utterly alone, and the world we know becomes unrecognizable and terrifying. The dark forest also forces us to stop and take stock and try to find our bearings. There is unspeakable grief, loss that cannot be repaired, fear justified by impossible financial situations, sudden illness, existential danger, war, environmental catastrophe. Dark forests can swallow us, especially when the world's forests are set ablaze and threatening our planetary future. And yet, if we look up through the burning trees, the stars can guide us out and back to some semblance of a path, Dante's diritta via. In order to find the straight path, Dante embarks on a journey into hell, purgatory, and paradise, and is transformed by his encounters, restored to a sense of wholeness and hope for his soul's redemption. But Dante can't do this alone. He is accompanied by 2 guides, those who really speak to his heart. The ancient poet Virgil, to accompany him into hell and halfway up purgatory, and Beatrice, the love of his life, to take him through the celestial spheres of heaven. Who are, or who have been, your guides on your spiritual path? Take a moment to think about this. Begin with people. Visualize them now. Perhaps your parents or grandparents, a good teacher, friends, animals, ministers. See their faces in your mind's eyes. Sometimes the people we find most difficult in our lives are actually our greatest guides. So take a couple of moments to consider. Who are your guides? Who have been your guides? Now think about which authors or books you may have turned to for comfort, for guidance, for spiritual nourishment. John O'Donohue, the beloved poet and basically Unitarian poet laureate, writes in Anamkara that to truly become yourself, you need the ancient radiance of others. Words written centuries ago can illuminate our path and give us strength. The people we love can bring us alive again and help us go where we don't know and never be the same. It is through this hospitality to each other that we move the world forward, that we give meaning to all of our spiritual transformations. We will now have some music for reflection, and I invite you to light a candle if you wish to. Let's come together to sing the ancient Irish blessing, which was originally written in Gaelic. May the road rise with you, hymn 102 in the Purple Book. Chapter 3, Homecoming. In the summer of 2019, before COVID changed everything, I found myself at Hucklow Summer School with about 80 other Unitarians and my 2 small children. We were people of all shapes and sizes between the ages of 18 months and 96, gathered together for a week of Unitarian theme talks, services, chanting, and engagement groups. I felt, perhaps for the first time in my life, that I could be entirely myself, and that within that community, I was accepted completely and absolutely. Not only that, but I felt that I too accepted and loved everyone there exactly as they were. John O'Donohue says that the awakening of the human spirit is a homecoming, and this is what I hunger for. The real reason why I lead services or go to chapel, why I write my own Bible and stop to look at the sky every day. I'm coming home to myself, but beyond my ego, beyond me, to the mystery that is in all of us and in everything. Through practice, whether it be sitting on my mat or singing in a chapel, I sometimes come to a place of deep rest, a place of letting go, that I recognize as a homecoming. The poet Wendell Berry calls this resting in the grace of the world. My guides along the way help me expand that feeling of homecoming, of eternal belonging. I recognize this feeling in the hard work of love, the work we do in our relationships, in our families, in our congregations, and our communities. We need to come home to each other and to guide each other home. Like Owl's moon following him home, this place of rest, this spiritual home, is always there, if only we dare to look at it. So before we leave to go back into the wider field of our lives, let's hold a moment of silence together. Let's dip into the wider hidden well that is always there for us, if only we stop to listen. So let's really take a moment together to be silent. We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time. You are here. We are here. People watching from home, you are here with us too. May the road rise up to meet you. May the wind be always at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face, the rains fall soft upon your fields. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of her hand. Thank you for coming. Go well.
Just remains for me to thank Eleanor for the strengthening, comforting, and inspiring service. It was lovely. Yes. And to remind you of the collection basket at the back and flash your credit card. Okay, and please join us for tea and coffee at the back of the chapel.
Do you have a tradition of blowing out the chalice, or? So I just do it? Or we leave the candle?
Eleanor, my favourite name. When my first child was born, I thought, who do I want to call her after? And I had this wonderful grandmother who made her life as a seamstress. And she was called